That's what it says. Are we going to do that?
I'm going to be getting on that plane right there.
Joe Biden, I'm hands-on. A better Texas artist. And welcome to a special edition of the Marty Heiser Show. You know, this attack of this wonderful actor, Mr.
Caller, do you have something? Good evening and welcome to a special edition of the Marty Heiser Show. If you're in any way reacting the way I am reacting to what's going on in the world, it's like sitting under the a waterfall in the Niagara waterfall and just trying to drink it all in. Things are happening so quick and so fast. I mean, Venezuela was so 2 weeks ago, where those special forces guys from Delta went in there and nabbed the head of Venezuela. And all of a sudden now we've got like 100 billion gallons of oil coming out of Venezuela. Bada bing, bada boom, everything's fine. Then all of a sudden we look over at Iran. We go to negotiations with Iran and they come to the table. What's the first thing they say? Yeah, we have 46 kilo whatever of enriched uranium, enough for 11 bombs. That was their like ante. If you're playing poker, that's what they led with. And then at that point, I don't know, from my perspective, that we had no other choice, but we had to go in and take them out. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump is the guy to do that. And now, while that's going on, our boy Rubio heads over to Cuba. And it's like, hey, shall we talk? And you're not getting the free oil from Venezuela. Your guy, Vladimir, over in Russia ain't helping out too much anymore. What do you want to do? Want to do this the nice way or the hard way? I mean, things are happening so quickly. I remember a year ago or so, it was, oh my gosh, these tariffs, it's going to be terrible, going to be terrible. All of a sudden, all-time highs on the stock market, trade imbalances going down. And then on the crime front, Google Memphis, Tennessee. What Trump's doing with that is just incredible. And I'm not here to just puff up Trump. I don't even know my guest who's written this great book. I don't even know exactly what his politics are, but it's just the pace of what's going on. This is not business as usual. There is change in the air. And with change, I guess there's an opportunity for it to go really bad, but it also could go really good. I've got loaded up videos of first Venezuelan women dancing in the street. Now we got Iranian women dancing in the street. Iran, is it over? Is it done? Are we what's gonna happen next? I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing I know: their navy's at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. They got butt gifts for airplanes. They got no air force. You can fly a helicopter into Tehran and for lunch, and no one would bother it. So I don't know how it's all going to work out, but there definitely is change in the air. But tonight, we're going to be talking about something that you sometimes, I guess, collectively as a country, certainly individually in your own personal economics, you say, like, I think we're okay. I don't know. We've been putting a lot on the credit card, but hey, that trip to the Bahamas was great. It should be fine. We'll pay it down. And you just get this kind of feeling like maybe things aren't so great. And you think about that on a macroeconomic level with the United States, and we're going to get a dose of some not too good news on the economy. Because tonight we're going to be joined by Bill Bergman. He spent 4 decades in the financial markets. For 13 years, he was an economist and a financial market analyst for the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. He got his MBA at University of Chicago, but more importantly than that, his fundamental years, those crucial years, kindergarten to 6th grade, were spent at Sacred Heart School in Hubbard Woods / Winnetka, Illinois. And that's where we have some common roots. But he's written this book. It's just incredible. Financial avoid financial and economic disaster with economics, ethics, and excellence. This is the book. So you got the ship, and it's heading towards the iceberg of debt. And it's just an incredible book. And there's a lot to talk about with this. But let me just bring on Bill. He's coming all the way from Illinois, which, by the way, there's a plethora of different graphs in this book. And there's one that just talks about total indebtedness. And I think Illinois is at the top of that list. And also the per capita number of attorneys compared to the population. That by per capita, I think Illinois is at the top of two lists you don't necessarily want to be on top of. So, Bill, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Great to be here, Marty. It's great to share our common roots as well as our common friendship with David Walker, who is a leader in government finance and raising the call for attention to our common public purse, which is not in healthy shape.
It really isn't. And it's like I said, sort of personally, you think, well, it's almost like, what do you mean I'm overdrawn at the bank? I've still got a bunch of checks left in my checkbook. That's kind of sometimes how you.
Well, you and I can't print money, and neither can the state of Illinois, but the federal government can, and that's one of the threats that's facing us. Here we are in Illinois, and I can't resist sharing. We're in the middle of a massive thunderstorm. And 1 inch hail is hitting my window. So if it sounds like there's death and destruction, there's a reason. Sorry.
This could be a sign. We're getting signs from heaven, hailstorms. If all of a sudden you're overcome with locusts and frogs, maybe we got to read the tea leaves here and say we got some fixing we got to do.
In economics, they say correlation is not causation, but that's, it's very interesting that we have the hail hitting the window right now. And the lightning is just starting. Okay, have a good day.
As they say, a blind man can see the hand of God. Today out here, crazy weather, early March like this, it was 77 degrees out there, and I still got a foot of snow in my front yard. So crazy times, it could be a problem. But let's dive into this book. Avoid Fiscal and Economic Disaster with Ethics, Economics, and Excellence. What I loved about this book, and you divide it into kind of three parts, the ethics, the economics, and then the excellence, is you really bring in personalities. Here are three quick quotes from what I guess are mutual heroes of ours, especially from the Chicago land area. Michael Jordan. Always turn a negative situation into a positive situation. It's interesting because his race team just won a race in NASCAR, and I guess they were just settled a lawsuit in NASCAR, so that's taking a negative situation and turning it into a positive. And then John Wayne, courage is being scared to death, but settling up anyways. John Wayne. And then, of course, what we refer to as sweetness, Walter Payton, we are stronger together than we are alone. So intertwined with all this bad financial news and dire consequences that could be right around the corner, let alone the hail pounding your house right now, you do hold out hope if we can just get our gall dang act together. Is that the essence of it?
That's the goal. We don't want to be too dark. We're definitely painting a dark picture, but our goal is to turn the ship around in the right direction. And ultimately, we're hopeful and trying to inspire others to care about this common grounds that we have, and not letting special interest groups use our common good for their own self-interest. That's one of the fundamental problems we believe, and I believe that we're facing in the United States of America, is the selfish abuse of government, which should be for the common good. And in turn, so many people today and so many interest groups of a variety of political stripes are using the public purse for their own self-interest, not for, and again, not where we're coming from in terms of political beliefs. I'm a very limited government, original Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson type of person, that I'm concerned that our government has grown so massive and has grown so massive because of these special interest group forces that have not only used the public purse for their own self-interest, but the government servants that have helped them do that have run up the credit cards on the rest of us in ways that we're going to see are aren't very pretty.
It's really, yeah, you think about it like childcare. Okay, young couple, they got two incomes. It's not like mama, grandmother lives in the house like they did back on the farm in Kansas back in the 1800s. These people need childcare. So it's a good thing. It's a good public good. How can we work this out? But then you see what's happened in Minneapolis and Minnesota. And it was like 5 years ago, they spent $3 million to subsidize childcare. 5 years later, with the fraud that went, it's $348 million to help to support childcare in Minneapolis. And then you find out that there's fraud everywhere. Like money is flying out of the Minneapolis airport on a daily basis, just cash, and it's going back to Somalia. So the little guy like us, it's like, yeah, hey, it'd be nice to help out with childcare. I see that as a good thing. It'd be great to have daycares, a learning center here or there. But all of a sudden, you come to find out you're getting screwed. They're fleecing us under the guise of sympathy. They're coming up with all these scams, and it's just they're just robbing us blind. Am I reading that wrong? Because you talk a lot in the government about a breakdown in trust in the government.
Yes, and I think this is one example of a bigger set of problems with a wide variety of government programs, which in theory are, and again, we have a section in the book on economics. In economics, we tend to learn that we should respect freedom and free markets in the pursuit of happiness. It tends to lead to the best outcome. Government intervention oftentimes is advertised to solve market failures. And yet at the same time, we find out, just like in this Minnesota situation, which is not alone, that government solutions for subsidizing things turn into a problem on their own. And as a result, I'm a fan of free decisions of people to make their own choices for charity, not necessarily through the government. We do need, a basic fundamental safety net, but when you have 1 in 8 Americans now, I guess I've heard on food stamps, you wonder how big it's gotten and how much of it has been abused.
Yeah, and you come to find out, like you see what's happened with Elon Musk with this Doge thing, and you go in there and you find out USAID, which seems like such a benevolent situation, people are fleecing that, and they're taking the money, and then the political party that puts these things in these NGOs in place, they get a kickback. They get campaign donations from all the government, your tax dollars, my tax dollars, or you're saddled with debt, and other people saddled with debt. And then they get kickbacks, they fill their coffers, and it's just a vicious cycle of fraud. It just goes over and over. And all of a sudden, the people that you've been supporting, that have been voting for you, there aren't enough. So what do? You open the borders and you bring them in. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, your congressional districts that were shrinking because people are fleeing sinking ships, I hate to say it, like Illinois, like Illinois, Chicago, California, like New York, the Northeast, everyone's voting with their feet and getting the hell out of Dodge. So they're like, oh, well, let's just open up the borders and bring a lot of illegal aliens in here because it'll keep our congressional seats up. And then we'll try to, do the compassionate thing, let them vote or have mail-in ballots, and the whole thing is a fraud. I would like to think it's beginning to get uncovered.
I'm not inherently against immigration. I love it. I'm 85% Irish at the end of the day, but I can't resist sharing. Now we've got you mentioned USAID. Here are 2 other great books besides ours. Larry Feltus and I wrote this book, but I'm going to recommend to you a book called Lords in Poverty. Lords of Poverty. Have you ever heard of that book?
No, I like the title though.
Lords of Poverty by Graham Hancock, at least 20 years old. A thorough and scathing indictment of international aid by the United States and how international aid is actually used to enrich elites in impoverished nations, and it never really helps the people that it's advertised to help.
Well, there's another book. It's called Dead Aid, and I think it's pretty much the same thesis. They say what foreign aid is: you take money from poor people in our country and you send it to rich people in poor countries.
That's the
And
basic
that's how
gist
this
of
graft continues. But check this out: like my wife went to Rwanda with a friend of hers, and helping Christian ministries there and so forth. It is some of the most fertile ground on the planet. Think the grayback gorillas in the jungle. I mean, anything will grow in Rwanda. Vegetables, fruit, vegetables, anything will grow. Certainly wheat to feed the people. Yet there's so much aid going into that country that to make a bushel of hay or make a bushel of wheat, it costs so much more to plant the wheat, to irrigate the farm, to have the crops, to weed the crops, to harvest the crops, to dry the crops, and to put it in a bag. When you have aid just flying in on container ships left, right, and center, that the economics don't work anymore. So that they have this cycle of hunger and starvation because there's too much aid coming in, and you don't let agriculture develop indigenously in that country. But that's the same thing I think you're talking about.
It's a tendency that needs to be, not just in the area of poverty alleviation, which is, you have to have some sympathy for that, but more generally in government, the advertised intent of government programs to solve problems turns into a source of problems, not a solution. My experience is more thoroughly grounded in the banking system and regulation of banks. And I have a lot of scary stories about how that process can be abused. And there's this term called moral hazard. Have you ever heard of the term moral hazard, Marty?
Yes.
It dates to the insurance industry and the tendency. Insurance companies know that people, once they have insurance, they take more risk. Well, we have a variety of government programs that stabilize our banking system. And yet, as soon as they have the safety net that you and I provide as taxpayers, there's an incentive to take more risk. And in turn, that's the kind of thing that led to the 2008-2009 financial crisis. These solutions, I mean, going back in time, I can't resist. 1907, we had the worst banking panic in U.S. history up until that point in time. We theoretically fixed it in 1913 with the Federal Reserve System. And yet 20 years later, we got the worst banking panic in U.S. history in 1933. Despite or probably because of the fact that we solved it with the Federal Reserve. Fast forward, we add deposit insurance to the mix. We guarantee all the banking deposits. And what happens after that? Well, we get the deposit insurance crisis in the 1980s, the S&L crisis. We fix that, but we don't. And some of the ways that we don't do it lead to the 2008 crisis. So all these interventions in government, they tend to be there's a reason why there's a book called How to Get Rich in Washington from 1952. I also recommend. The idea is that as soon as people start solving things in Washington, the people that care the most about it are using the solutions for their own benefit at the expense of the general public.
And I don't think there's anything more insidious than that, because you have these virtue signaling bureaucrats. They're saying, oh, we're trying to help the homeless. Oh, we're trying to provide childcare. Oh, we're trying to have special education. All good things. But at the end, it's like the big green scam. They got their hand in the till. They're making millions. They're making money hand over fist. It was interesting when Obama and the Democrats were in charge in Washington. You have related, like, what's the wealthiest county in the country? And, often it'll be like Fairfield County, Connecticut with Greenwich and Darien, or then it'd be Marin County out in San Francisco with all those high-tech guys, or different ones. The wealthiest, the biggest concentration of millionaires and wealth per capita was the counties right outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia. And it's just insidious because it's crony capitalism. It isn't like what you talk about in your book. You talk a lot about the invisible hand and the wealth of nations by, help me, I'm losing his name real quick.
Adam Smith.
It's Adam Smith. It's funny because
this is the 200.
Here I am. I'm just saying, awesome. Here I am at the gravesite of Adam Smith in Edinburgh, Scotland. So awesome. I'm not sure why. I couldn't come up with that name.
There's a, speaking of coincidences, there's in 1776, we had three things happen. We had Thomas Paine's Common Sense, which had some beautiful guiding lights for us today. I encourage everyone to reread Thomas Paine's words, which are worthy of consideration now in the United States, I'm afraid. But then we had Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, and then we got the Declaration of Independence. All these three things came together in 1776.
There's one more you're leaving out, and that's Dr. Samuel Johnson and his dictionary. Also was published in 1776. He was the great literary figure in London, Samuel Johnson. He quoted as he was basically criticizing those ungrateful colonists in America who were fighting this terrible revolution from his perspective sitting in London. But he said, the loudest cries for freedom are from drivers of slaves. So that was his take. That was Samuel Johnson, an interesting guy to hear about. But yeah, you talk about Thomas Paine and you talk about some of the things that he wrote and that came out. And you're right, they all came out in 1776. And you're calling for nothing less than a comparable revolution in the way we look at money, because we're in trouble.
Intellectual and cultural and common awareness revolution, not necessarily a violent one, but we do need a fundamental rethinking, including using our Constitution and constitutional amendment process. It's not our original idea, but for instance, David Walker is pounding the drums on a fiscal responsibility amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Our book stresses the importance of seeking out higher ground and higher principles and not necessarily relying on law or legal solutions, which often turn into a problem, not a solution. But at the end of the day, perhaps we do need some form of legal constraints on the powers that be that have delivered this massive debt problem that we now face. And it's maybe we need a constitutional amendment. That's consistent with a fellow. We talk in the book about the public choice school of economics. Marty, have you heard the term public choice school of economics?
I'm going to lie and say yes, because I want to sound erudite and well-read. But honestly, you bring me up to speed.
I'm sorry
I got Adam Smith, but
now you're not alone. And I'm not trying to be like, there's a school of economics called the public choice school of economics. In economics, there's a fundamental assumption that people are, quote, rational, which is debatable. But what do they mean by rational? And in fact, it's the sense that people tend to pursue their self-interest. People try to make themselves better off. There's a fundamental yearning to try to get better off, which is a good thing. It's not necessarily evil. However, the public choice school of economics says, okay, wait a minute. If we presume in economics that people are rational, maybe we should also assume that government officials are rational. Maybe they aren't really working for all of us. They're selfish like the rest of us. And when we realize that, we end up coming to a sad conclusion that the people driving the bus for the good of all of us are actually selfish and in turn are co-opted by special interest groups. That's the prediction. And there's a fellow named James Buchanan we introduce in the book to you. James Buchanan was a Chicago school economist. I was invited to teach economics at Chicago when I graduated. Without a PhD, that was kind of exciting. I got to know the Chicago School of Economics. And this fellow said, at the end of the day, because the government officials are selfish, guess what? A, they spend lots of money to make their friends happy. And B, they borrow to do it because taxing people is just too expensive for them and they're a threat to their reelection chances. So they spend more than they take in and build up the debt that's now facing America.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about, a couple things. Just real quick, I'm going to get some quotes here. You talk about Thomas Paine and what you're calling for. Yeah, it's kind of nuts and bolts. It's X's and O's. This is what we got to do to fix the economy. But you are appealing to the better angels of our nature. I think Lincoln said that. But, through this, it's like, hey, guys, Nothing but us chickens in this chicken coop, and if we don't get our act together, the whole thing's coming down. So you give the quote from Thomas Paine: "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and women. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have the consolation with us that the heart of the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is the dearness that gives everything its value." Talking about Thomas Paine, now his appeal was to those that were yearning for freedom in the Patriots back in 1776 to fight against King George and the oppressive government. But you know how they defined oppressive government? A 3% tax on a breakfast beverage. That was enough to send these guys over the edge to board ships in Boston Harbor and throw over the bloody tea into the harbor. 3%. Me and you, like you, Tax Freedom Day, you've got to work like 5.5 months just to pay all your state, local, resident, real estate tax, federal tax, everything else. Just you get to keep the rest of it after you've paid off all the taxes that you owe. It's incredible.
You and I, Marty, are maybe especially animated about this because you're in Connecticut and I'm in Illinois. We're in ground zero. There are responsible states that are taking care of their citizens and yet not being driven. There's places I've grown fond of Utah and places like that are much more careful with the public purse than we are.
Yeah, they're not quite as crazy as us. Just real quick to say what you're talking about. We're talking about Adam Smith, and he's talking about it. And I guess the liberals will clutch their pearls when you talk about the innate selfishness of man. But it's accurate. It's accurate. It's a Soviet Union that said, "Oh, if we get rid of the classes, there will be a new Soviet man, and the violinist will play for the man that makes his food just out of the goodness of his heart, and everything will have everything in common." Bullshit. I mean, it's just a bunch of crap. Then Adam Smith.
The Soviet Union said they were for the common citizen, and they turned out to be for themselves. I'm afraid our government, not all the states, but our federal government and some states have. What is tyranny? One way to define it is as a government that works for itself and its special interest groups, not for the common citizen. I'm afraid we've moved in that direction.
Absolutely. Like you look, I mean, we here just outside of New York City are getting a front row seat to what tyranny looks like with this communist that's now running New York City. And the first thing you see is that he's raising everyone's, we're talking about free bus ride, forget free bus ride. The price went up $3 everywhere. The celebration night after he won, it wasn't an open bar. Beers were $12 a beer, stuff like that. And all these people that thought they were going to get free rent are seeing their rent go up and taxes go up. It's unbelievable. But when you talk about from the free enterprise, market-based economy, like Adam Smith said in his book, The Wealth of Nations in 1776, listen, and you quoted it in your book on page 41. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interests. We address ourselves not to their humanity, but to their self-love, and never talk of them of our own necessities, but of their advantages. In other words, at the butcher shop, they don't kill a cow and cut a nice steak because they like you. They kill a cow and cut a nice steak because it cost them $5 to do that, and they can sell it to you for $10. So it's
I like to extend that argument, Marty, to the following. It's not just selfishness can also including someone else's happiness in your own happiness. Love can be good for markets. Loving your customer is good for you. They're not necessarily one and two different things.
But I would say, and you get back to Christianity, which you talk about a lot in the book, and from the Christian perspective, we live in a fallen land We live in a fallen world, and the heart of man is in desperate need of redemption because we are dirty, rotten, hell-deserving sinners needing salvation. That's why Jesus paid for our sins by dying a substantial or a death on the cross that was a perpetuation for our sins, a substitute for our sins. And that if you have a Christian or Catholic worldview, that is the essence of humanity. It isn't that I'm a good guy. It's not I'm okay, you're okay, let's just get along. It's that man is in need of redemption. And given that, I think market capitalism is the most rational approach to organizing our economics.
Well, some people who would disagree with you would say that, no, we need government to step in and nudge people to do the right thing. But I'm afraid that selfishness helps promote happiness in markets, but it tends to do the opposite when it comes to government. Government gets taken over by people that use it for their own benefit, not at the expense of other people. The government tends to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah. Well, in 1948, after we had just fought a world war and we were, triumphant, we had beaten back the Nazis and the fascists and so forth. Then we saw the Soviet Union begin to have this communist worldview, and they were taking over. And I don't know if it was a result of that or what have you, but 1948, I believe it was Disney, put out this cartoon talking exactly about what you're talking about. Hold on, here we go.
Answer to your problems, Dr. Utopia's sensational new discovery, ISM. ISM will cure any ailment of the body politic. It's terrific. It's tremendous. Once you swallow the contents of this bottle, you'll have the bountiful benefit of higher wages, shorter hours, and security. Enormous profits, no strikes. Remember, you're the big boss. Government control, no worry about votes, name your own salary. Bigger crops, lower costs. Why, ISM even makes the weather perfect every day. And now then, because we are introducing this amazing item for the first time in this country, it isn't going to cost you 1 cent. All you have to do is sign this little scrap of paper, and you get your bottle absolutely free.
I hereby turn over to ISM Incorporated everything I have, including my freedom and the freedom of my children and my
answer to your problems. Dr. Utopia's sensational new.
So all you got to do is just hand over all your freedom to the government, and they're going to organize it, and it's going to be really great.
Well, one of the ways they organize things is with laws. And as you've seen in the book, Marty, we have an argument that America has accumulated law upon law, and the massive artifice of law that we've imposed on society has cost too. What is the cost of government? Government produces laws. And one thing that we see looking across the 50 states is that states with more lawyers tend to be in worse financial condition. They tend to have slower economic growth. They tend to have higher outmigration. So one of our proposals is consistent. There's a fellow named Philip Howard who wrote The Death of Common Sense. And he has an idea that we hijack in the book for a legal simplification commission, coming up with a fundamental way of returning law to a much simpler era and relying more on human principles and higher principles, not law to order society for us.
Well, to me, what we're doing here is we're going to the doctor. You're the doctor of economics, and you've run some tests and you've analyzed some things. And like you're talking about right there, the difficulty we're in, over-legislated, over-regulated, over-legaled. What are the consequences of that in the economy? And you brought a list of graphs and so forth. And so I think, doctor, we're ready for the bad news. The cholesterol level, you got to stop drinking as much, more exercise, eat more cauliflower. Tell us what we need to do, but let's run through some of these graphs that you have and just tell us the bad news. We can take it.
Okay. Do you have the slides?
Yeah, I think Jonathan. Oh, here we go. Go ahead.
Okay, quick. This is me and my co-author, Larry Feltus. He was the instigator on this project. Larry's a great guy and had compiled. We've got 100 years experience. I have 40. He has 60, so that's more than 100. Larry's Larry compiled this massive thing of quotes, inspirational quotes, and we share common concerns about government and the integrity of government policy. Here's a look at Gallup polling results over the last 20 years, confidence in the federal government. You see the trend is not your friend here in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
If you look at it by party affiliation, there's a distinction in terms of pride in America, not necessarily confidence in government, but pride in America. You see Republicans more proud than Democrats, with a fun, strange thing happening there in 2025 for a reason. But I think the most important line in this chart is is that center line, the independents, the dotted line, and you see pride in America among independents falling dramatically in the last 20 years. Pride in America.
Interesting.
Those are the independents all by themselves. Here's a different organization, Pew, which does a trust in government poll, similar results going way back. These are kind of dark results. We should not, this is the United States of America. This should not be going in this direction. Financially, here's a look at the change in net position. Coming up in 9 days, your listeners and viewers have a chance to read something that no one in America reads, and that's the financial report of the U.S. government. This is the change in net position on the income statement, effectively, for the federal government. These years were all good economic years, and you can see the trend is not your friend in this direction. Those are all red numbers because they're negative. The government is taking in less money than it's spending at an accelerating rate, leading to higher debt. And the consequence is the next slide. This is a slide showing the number of times the word unsustainable appears in the financial report of the U.S. government. Given the rising and accelerating forces of debt and interest expense on the public purse in the United States. You can do things simple in financial markets sometimes when faced with the U.S. government's financial report is the most complicated thing on the planet. But this is a simple thing. I just counted the number of times the word unsustainable appeared. This helped before 2008 with a very large financial services company looking at rhetoric analysis like this. And this simple indicator is a little bit scary. Go ahead. This is interest expense paid on the federal debt, rising at an accelerating rate in recent years. We're now north of $1 trillion a year just to pay for yesterday in the United States. It's not sustainable. This is something that, again, your viewers now are looking at something that no one in America reads, but they should, and that's the balance sheet of the U.S. government. You've got assets, liabilities, and A minus B gives you the net position. In 2024, you had $6 trillion in assets. In 2024, you had $46 trillion in liabilities. 6 minus 46 is a big negative number, 40 trillion. In the whole one that's been growing significantly in recent years. Let's just take a quick step back. I'm sorry if we don't have enough time, Marty, but
No, you got time. Go ahead.
Take a look at those assets. What's the largest single asset in 2024 on the federal government's balance sheet?
Loans receivable?
And what's the biggest component of that? Do you want to guess?
Loans we've made to ourselves in treasuries.
These are loans receivable, and those are receivable to the government from students. Student loans. Student loans are the biggest asset on the federal government's balance sheet.
Wow.
It was nowhere near this in 2010 when President Obama and friends just showered money down on academia. And now the fastest growing and largest asset on the federal government's balance sheet is a huge problem. That's on the assets. The liabilities are massively outnumbering the assets. Let's step back and do one more quick, very simple thing. Financial statements have three things. Those three things are words on the left-hand side, numbers on the right-hand side, and one more thing, symbols. You don't see it here, but do you see those numbers? The 1751 is in billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, Marty, I'm not to press you, but what is a dollar? We should know what a dollar is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what is a dollar? It's when you ask simple questions and look under the hood that things get very interesting. And I'm going to encourage you and your viewers to Google what is a dollar. And you're going to find two articles that are worthy of reading about the legal history of the US dollar. One of them is by a fellow named Edwin Vieira, who concluded that at the end of the day that the dollar has become, in his terms, a political abstraction. It's become deliberately malleable. The government likes having it ambiguous because it can change its value when it wants to. That relates to another slide coming up. That balance sheet of the U.S. government.
Who can forget Mad Magazine? That was a highlight.
There we go. That was another Sacred Heart thing for sure. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, you sneak those in, but you better make sure Sister Don Bosco doesn't find you.
Sister Don Bosco didn't let us. She didn't let us read Mad Magazine, did she? No.
It was funny. You couldn't even have candy at that school, so we would go down to the corner drugstore and get cherry tasting cough drops, and that was candy when you were in third, fourth grade at Sacred Heart.
Oh, remember
Mother Teresa? It's not candy. It's a cough drop. It's a cherry cough drop.
It's got sugar. You're in trouble, buddy.
But no, go back to the quote. Go back to the quote from the Mad Magazine guy.
That scary balance sheet we just looked at is preceded by the following comforting sentences. Here's what the federal government tells us. There are, however, other significant resources available to the government that extend beyond the assets presented in these balance sheets. Those resources include stewardship, PP&E, like the national parks. In addition to, and here's the key language, the government's sovereign powers to tax and set monetary policy.
Yeah.
In other words, we should be comforted that our government's going to be okay because it can take our money away. Or it can inflate the value of the money away. And I'm not comforted by these sentences. Who is sovereign? Who is sovereign in the United States, Marty?
I'd like to, you quoted from John Wayne, so we have that rugged individualism cultural background, so we'd like to think we're sovereign. I own this house. This here's my property. It's bought and paid for.
What are the first three words of the U.S. Constitution?
Is it we the people?
We the people are sovereign. We have popular sovereignty. That's what we fought for in 1776.
Okay.
The people. Okay. It's not a king. We don't have the government is not our king. We the people are sovereign. But here in those sentences, the government is telling us not to worry because the government's possessive S, sovereign powers to tax. The government is claiming to having the ultimate authority. This is in a document theoretically securing the accountability of the government to the real sovereign of the United States. That's you and I and everybody else. We the people. The government is our servant. It's not our king.
Well, they even in some of those formative documents, they even go further than that. They say we are endowed by our creator with inalienable rights. So they ground it in this theistic view of the world that we aren't given freedom of speech or freedom of association.
These are unalienable rights
from the government, because then they can take that away. But it's like God made us free. We have the right to pursue liberty and pursuit of happiness, and no government can take it away.
Oh, that's our stuff. It's not the government's, and that's the. But
the brilliance of the formative documents is, okay, the First Amendment is you have the freedom of speech. You can say anything you want. And then the Second Amendment is you better get a gun.
In order to speak.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, you got the freedom to say anything you want. You have the freedom to pursue your happiness as you see it. But tell you what, we're gonna kind of protect those freedoms by having a gun. And I don't know. I mean, it all kind of melds together at this point when you think about our brothers and sisters in Iran right now. The vast majority of the people don't want to be ruled by these Islamists, and yet they have gun control in Iran, and the only one with the guns are the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And out of 90 million people, like, give or take, there's like 150,000 members of the Iranian Republican Guard or Revolutionary Guard, and they're the ones with the guns. So we're still in the thick of this. I don't know when this thing it's going to go on TV, but hopefully by the time it's
of this. But I'm pretty sad personally about all the deaths. I'm more of a Prince of Peace person on this stuff.
Yeah, I am too. And the deaths you might be thinking about are some of the protesters from two, 3 weeks ago. Reports of 40,000, or rather 30 or 40,000 that passed away. So yeah, ideally it'd be great to have everyone just come to the table and say, yeah, we don't want this government here anymore. But history says it's something else, unfortunately.
Well, we can go on the slides if you.
Yeah, please.
Larry and I share some common history on working to try to do the right thing in bureaucracies. Larry in the Air Force, myself at the Federal Reserve, and at the end of the day, we both kind of got in hot water for trying to do good things, we think anyway. And we dedicate this book to the bravery of those who dare to seek the truth and act upon it. Speaking truth to power can make a positive difference for all. And we try to help other people see this light. I think that's important for all of us. Being empowered to do your own work, to try to find the truth. The truth can be hard to know, but trying to find it in an earnest way, and then in turn speaking truth to power. That's part of what I see in the Catholic and Jesuit tradition, that you don't necessarily take what the power that be tells us the truth is. You seek it on your own and speak truth to power. And that's where
there's a verse in the Bible that says, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you can show what the will of God is, that which is good and perfect. But the idea is, don't be pushed into a mold. Don't let the world push you into the mold. And you know what I saw? It's wonderful to see. But the resurgence of the young people attending Catholic Mass is just great. I mean, it's young couples, you hear all this stuff and all the graphs and everything like that, but family formation, getting married, having children, not buying into the feminist mystique of, having numbers of abortions and having your freedom to go work for corporate America. And then you have these ladies that are in their 30s and 40s, not having kids, not having a family, and they're kind of taking another look at that. So it's been interesting and encouraging to see the resurgence of young adults attending Catholic Mass, and the resurgence of some of these churches. There's one down in New York City that was in the news just a couple days ago.
When you go to the fertility issue, we talk about that in our book from an economic perspective. That's one of the indicators. We're seeing declining fertility rates in the United States, significantly declining. Why? Because I'm afraid the cost of living has been going up in ways that make life more expensive, in ways that it makes it younger people are postponing marriage and not having as many kids as they used to. And that's not a help, especially for Social Security and Medicare, another whole set of topics. Financially, declining fertility rates don't help an already hard situation. Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, no, like I say, I studied this book like the Talmud, but yeah, fertility rates going down. And then you think, oh, well, finally, we have some graphs that are going up, yet the graphs going up is the suicide rate.
And then
if that wasn't depressing enough, you also had this graph going up, death by despair.
Which is a broader range, not just suicide. And these are sad, but possibly true statistics that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, yeah. You talk about like from death by despair. The term "death by despair" was coined by a Princeton researcher, Ann Case and Agnes Deaton, in 2017 article in Brookings. By the way, you're very well referenced throughout this whole book. It's impressive. But just talking about cases that they talked about were death from despairs, combining suicide, alcohol-related liver disease, drug overdoses, things like that. They might not be out and out suicide, but death by despair seems to cover it.
That's not, it's a sad, but something we need to be aware of as a symptom of the unhealthier trends that we have in America today.
Well, I think what you have in this book is you really look at it holistically. You look at, like, you broke it up, with ethics, economics, and excellence, but you took into account the human experience. What are we going through? How does the economics affect people's relationship, family formation, culture? The nuclear family is on the upward trend or downward trend, and what does that mean for people? An overbearing government that controls everything, or the enhancement of human liberty and individuals, the Adam Smith, the invisible hand, the ability to make your own choices. It's really kind of a holistic thing. What I'd like to do as we close out here and kind of the rapid fire is there's a couple lists that I think were, just great. Just lists of people and people that are involved and people that you've quoted. Just give us a little synopsis. I'll go through them. Anne Frank, you talk about Anne Frank, Anne Frank's diary, and you quote her extensively. How does she relate to all this?
Well, I thought she provided a wonderful example of someone who could be optimistic in oppressive circumstances, and someone who could be positive and provide a light for others. That was her contribution in one of the ways that I interpret her.
Anne Frank was, of course, she hid in a hiding place in the Netherlands as the Nazis had taken over Amsterdam. Have you ever been there? Have you visited it? It's quite impressive. But she wrote a diary called, obviously, Anne Frank's Diary, and she was later captured, given up, but she continued to write in the concentration camps and then lost her life, unfortunately. But you talk a lot. You talk even things like Confucius and some of those. What does Confucius bring to the table?
Confucius offered more than a few nuggets that we think are worthy of attention. Can you share one or two of them with me just to spark my? Do you have one of those in front of you? Some of those quotes?
I don't. I've gone on to a much more intellectual, deep person, and that's Vince Lombardi. And the quote I can give you from him is, "Gentlemen, this is a football." Go ahead.
Yeah, that was a great line. At the end of the day, you've got to get simple. It's good to start with fundamentals. And that's one of the goals that we have in the book. In a world of complicated problems, it's good to step back and think about what really matters in a simple term and start with square one. That's what we need to do. I think in the United States today, we need to go back to square one. Gentlemen, after a tough season, this is a football, and we're going to get started and move in the right direction.
And then you talk about George Orwell in his book 1984. You said Orwell's protagonist was Winston Smith, who worked in the Ministry of Truth. They actually tried to do that in the previous administration. The job was to rewrite historical material to fit the party narrative. Winston became acutely sensitive to this participation in the system. He began to inwardly rebel, courageously commit thought crimes, risking prosecution from the thought police. Observing behavior of common people, Smith once lamented, until they become conscious, they will never rebel. Until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious. It's interesting right now, Great Britain, I think they prosecuted something like 3,600 people for things they posted on Facebook that in any way could be viewed as negative towards this Islamist tradition that we see, the zenith of which you see in Iran. But what about that? What is George Orwell?
One way we put Orwell to work in looking at recent events We quote two very good economists named Alex Pollock and Paul Kupiec. They've done some work on the Federal Reserve and its balance sheet and inflation. And Pollock has written some great stuff about, back in 1977, Marty, you showed people the McDonald's menu board. Well,
Yeah.
in 1977, we passed a law called the Federal Reserve Reform Act. When that menu was up there, the Federal Reserve Reform Act provided the first mandate for the Federal Reserve to pursue, quote, maximum employment, stable prices, and moderate long-term interest rates. Okay, if the Federal Reserve was directed by law to pursue stable prices in 1977, how stable have prices been since 1977? In fact, the CPI has quintupled since 1977. McDonald's prices, looking at this, are like 10 times higher today than they were in 1977. And Kupiec and Pollock, there you can see Alex Pollock's name right now, and you were showing it on the. They cite that George Orwell would be proud because the Federal Reserve has redefined what stable prices means. It means low inflation. Well, guess what? Over time, it adds up, and you and I get to pay for that.
Yeah, you quote extensively from Tom Peters and Robert Waterman in Search of Excellence, a great book back from the 1980s. And he talks about some of the key elements of that: a bias for action, getting close to the customer, emphasizing the entrepreneurial spirit, and even a large firm, raising productivity of people as well as process, delivering hands-on, value-driven services, and sticking to your knitting.
I love that stuff, and it's worthy of emulating, not only in the private sector, but then things get kind of problematic when you think about the customer service from a government perspective. Who's the customer? And if government serves its customers in terms of special interest groups at the expense of the rest of us, no, this loving your customer stuff is great in the markets, in free markets, in corporate output for helping customers. But when government redefines its purpose as serving special interest groups, not the common good, which is what tendency tends to be, then we got a
Someone
problem.
said when you take from Peter and give to Paul, which governments can do, they don't generate wealth, they just distribute it. You can count on Paul's vote, but not Peter's. Just to wrap it up on part 3 in excellence, you quote George Will, the public loves it. It gets $1 worth of government and it's charged 80 cents. 20 cents, a fifth of government is lobbed off for future generations. And then you talk about it, part 3 of our 3P ethics, economics, and excellence framework. It comes last because it's first. Reviving confidence and performance in the American Republic will require more people and organizations to commit to excellent behavior and the pursuit of achievement of excellent results. We believe a lack of declaration in excellence has been an important factor in slowing down economic growth. We're coming up against a hard stop, but we are also optimistic, however, that a rededication to excellence in the public policy can join together with ethics and economics to turn the American ship of state to a better direction. You got the last 10 seconds.
Well, that's the goal, is to get people fired up. And the way to do that, and we argue, is that self-education is really important. It's important to not only try to turn the ship in the right direction, but do your best to understand how to do that. Oftentimes doing less is more.
Avoid fiscal and economic disaster. Bill Bergman was our guest today. Thank you so much. Get this book, Bill Bergman, wherever you get books. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Go get them, Marty. Thanks.
Get off me! That's pretty tough. Well, now we're getting this should be. I say good for the poll. Enough is enough. Thanks for